Greetings, everyone. Happy Saturday. I'm going to make a special video today. I want to talk about my grandmother. Now, this video is being recorded on April 12th. It's been 6 years, I believe, since she passed away. She passed away on April 12th. At the time, it was actually Easter Sunday, which was her favorite holiday. My grandmother was one of the fiercest people I ever knew. One of my heroes, one of my personal idols, helped raise me, taught me a lot of lessons. She was kind of a hard ass, but I loved her anyway. I always think about her this time of year, especially in the springtime, because A, that's when she passed away, and B, it was her favorite season. But the most important lesson that my grandmother ever taught me was, if you start something, see it through. Always finish it. Don't start something and not finish it, and don't trust these hoes. Those two things have stuck by me over the years. She taught me the importance, the value of hard work, and the value of not trusting these hoes. And both of those are very true statements. I'll start with the hoes. That's where I'll start, and we'll kind of go from there. Don't trust these hoes, quite simply because they be hoeing and they do their hoish things. Now, I like hoes. I think most of my audience, being that it's mostly men who watch my videos, can attest that they probably like hoes too. Most of you, maybe not all of you, but a lot of you, but we don't trust them. You know? I'm not a slut shamer at all. I like whores. They're actually some of my favorite people. But if you're in a committed relationship and you're a whore, you need to stop whoring and be committed. But anyway, that's beside the point. She told me don't trust these hoes because they lie and they stink. That was a quote of hers. And I'm not exaggerating. That's actually what she told me. But she also taught me the importance of work ethic and perseverance. And I'm here to tell all of you that you should not give up. I know you want to give up. It's very easy to give up. Giving up is very easy short term, but it's very hard in the long term, because if you give up now, there could come a time where you look back and be like, damn, I shouldn't have quit. If I just would have held out a little bit longer, you know? And it's actually funny enough, you know, my grandmother actually had dreams of going into the military. She wanted to go into the Navy, and she talked to a recruiter when she was in high school. I think it was her senior year. I remember this story like it was yesterday. And basically the recruiter was like, oh no, you're a woman. You can't get into the military. They're not going to let you in. Which I don't even think at the time that was true. In fact, I know for a fact that it wasn't. It's just that back then, there weren't a lot of women in the military. And the recruiter was like, oh no, we're not going to have a place for you in the Navy. She was like, well, what do you think I should do? And he said, I don't know, get married, have some kids. And rather than not listening to that guy and doing what the fuck she wanted to do, she decided, actually, he's right. Now, I'm not trying to disparage my grandmother, obviously. I love that woman. May she rest in peace. One of my favorite people. But I did learn a very valuable lesson from that story. The one area in life where she decided to give up is something that she regretted until she got to her deathbed. And granted, I'm glad she didn't go through with that, because if she had, I wouldn't have been born. But I do know that it is something that she looked back on and was like, you know, if I would have taken that chance, I think I would have been much happier in the long run. And it's obviously, you know, a little bit of a slippery slope. I don't really know what to make of it, because, you know, again, at the end of the day, had she gone through with that, the likelihood that I would have been born is very slim. But the lesson that you can take away from that is that I guarantee you there's something, like I said in a previous video, that you're sitting on right now that you want to do and you want to try, but you're too scared to do it. And I'm telling you right now, the years are going to pass by and you're going to look back and you're going to be like, man, I really wish I would have gone through with that thing. I also, and God, this has actually turned into a little bit of a negative video. But my grandparents fought constantly. Okay, they were polar opposites. She was a very headstrong, go-getter type of person, type A personality, destined to burn out, never take a break type of person. And I mean, she fucking did manual labor until her body just completely gave out. I mean, until like well into her 60s, you know, and she just did not stop. And then my grandfather was the opposite. He was type B personality, lazy, unmotivated, don't give a fuck no mo type of guy. But he was also very eccentric and very funny and a very nice, caring individual. But they were two polarities. They were on opposite ends of the spectrum. And one thing that I learned from them, good, you know, for better or for worse, is to not stay in a relationship where you are genuinely unhappy, because that's what happened over time. You know, they were together for a very long time, almost 50 years. And toward the end, especially the past like decade, the last decade of their marriage, they had a lot of problems. And they had been having problems for a while, really the last 20 years of their marriage, and they stayed together. They toughed it out. And I think that there's something admirable about that. But I also think that if you are genuinely just so miserable that the spark isn't there anymore, it's time to part ways. And that's just that, you know, that's not just in relationships. That's also like across the board, friendships, even ties like with your family members. You know, people feel like they have to have this allegiance to their family, but they really don't. You know, if you have a toxic family member, you know, there is such a thing as distance. Where was I going with all of this? There is such a thing as distance, and I think the distance is important when people are draining you of your energy. And I'm getting way off track here. What was I talking about? My grandmother, yeah. She was really cool, man. But she was also kind of an asshole like me. And that's why we bonded. And so every person in my life, whether it be a family member or a loved one of any kind, you know, I always try to like emulate the good aspects of their personality and try to harness any of the bad that I might have inherited from them. You know, and I think that's very important. You have to look at people like people. I think oftentimes we try to bend people to our will instead of, and people in our life, we try to bend them to their will, or to our will, I mean. And I think that that's a very unhealthy way of looking at things, because you can't change other people. You know, it would be very easy for me to stand here and talk about all the ills of my grandmother or my grandfather or my dad or my stepdad or anyone. And it's important to understand that people are the way that they are for a variety of reasons. And for me, I just try to look at the good memories instead of the bad. And I know that that can be very hard sometimes, but you know, when you're dealing with grief, especially, because when my grandparents died, I was a wreck, and they died about 2 years apart, so it made it especially hard. And you know, I was co-raised by my grandparents because you know, my mom and dad went through a divorce, and you know, I was bounced back and forth between them and my mom. And so, you know, with that, you're going to have a lot of good memories and a lot of good times, but you're also going to have some unfavorable memories and maybe some not so good times. it's important to understand that parents, grandparents, your friends, everyone, co-workers, whoever, the people in your circle, in your life, they are all doing the best they can with the tools that they have at their disposal. And some people have more tools than others. And you have to understand that. And that doesn't mean that you excuse their behavior necessarily, depending. It just means that you have to internalize it in a way of, this is not my fault. Because a lot of people, no one's childhood is perfect, especially. No one's adulthood is perfect. And, you know, um, no one's perfect at all. And I think that's what gives the world color. There's people who live a very normal cookie cutter life, you know? They're raised in the quote unquote nuclear family, and they get straight A's, and then they graduate, and then they go off to college, and then they get a job right out of college with the degree that they have, and then they retire when they're 65 and buy property down in Florida. But that's an anomaly. That's not fucking normal. It definitely happens, but it's an anomaly. And I'm sure those people are great people, but they don't have cool stories to tell. My grandmother lived a very hard life, and she had a lot of cool stories to tell. So, it's like I said before, there's really no such thing as good or bad. It's just perspective. You know? Anyway, this is a little bit of a mixed message kind of video, which I feel like a lot of my videos, especially lately, have been like that because I'm so scatterbrained, and I do this is like an improv style type of thing. It's not like I take notes or anything. And so sometimes I just kind of bounce from topic to topic, but I hope you all understood the message of this video, or the messages, plural, of this video, and took something away from it. And of course, as always, be sure to like and share and comment and subscribe, and you know the fucking drill. Stay thirsty, you idiots.